I just know that like we're not all where we want to be, but we're one step closer to getting there, and realizing that not everybody has their shit figured out is huge. Welcome to the #1 podcast in the world, where we give you an authentic look into the world's healthiest, wealthiest, and most inspirational minds. We talk about trending topics, bold ideas, and give you real-world examples that will inspire you to take action and become the #1 version of yourself. On today's episode of the #1 podcast in the world, we are speaking about adversity, as Forrest said, and we have an incredible guest, our good friend, Mr. Drake Thompson.
Roll. Drake, introduce yourself.
So it is an honor to be here on this fine Sunday. So I thank everyone for bringing me on. As he said, I am here because a friend of ours had technically a bachelorette party.
Yeah, technically.
So it's the first time I've ever been to a bachelorette party, so it was a great experience.
That being the standard for bachelorette party, by the way. It's like, it's just like, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it was exactly what a movie would portray. Yeah. I mean, the conversations
verbatim.
Exactly what you see in the movies. It was very odd.
Yeah, people were shot.
You said it was odd?
Yeah, it was odd. I mean, I've never had open conversations about penises, so
there's a lot of talk of buttholes.
Yeah, it was. It was a bachelorette
an
party.
Exceptional amount of talk of buttholes.
Yes,
we could not get off that topic for a while.
Yeah, hours. But it was great, and not to get you guys into buttholes, but it was great. It was a great experience. But yeah, I'm a real estate entrepreneur out of Atlanta. Builder, developer, owner operator, about 50 units currently, and just trying to build a good business.
Awesome, man. So we're gonna, and just a reminder to you guys, as you're talking, feel free to grab the mic, really choke up on it. It'll just help with the audio quality later. But jumping right into adversity, I'm just going to pass it over. I think we'll start with you, Drake. Yeah. What are some of the building your business? And I know this because we try to do deals together and all that, but like, how do you deal with adversity, man? Like when shit hits the fan, when stuff's really tough, right? You got a deal that you need to get done, and it's really hard to get it done. Like what's your frame of reference for, just not giving up?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, it is a great question.
Yeah, it's a great question. As you know, on my Instagram, and you'll see it, it is probably 80% war memes, right? And war pictures. I mean, every day is adversity, especially in the real estate game. It's the wild, wild west. True. So, I mean, how I like to look at it, not to quote Nas here, but life's a bitch and then you die. But I like to look at it that we're in the trenches, right? I put my perspective on, people who have actually gone through some of the worst human conditions of all time, right? In the trenches, World War I, I wasn't going to say World War II because there's no trenches, but in the trenches.
Yeah, it's
right?
specific.
Where you're in the trenches and, it's cold, it's dreary. You're getting shelled all day. You've been there for a year. You haven't gone home. Like, these are some of the worst human conditions ever. And at every moment in time, someone's trying to kill you, right? So I like to pair that with just, where I am, at life. I'm sitting in my, penthouse looking out and just trying to do real estate. So when I really put it in perspective, it kind of, gives me the strength to say, look, like if these guys were able to do it for years in the trenches, back against the wall, all I got is a rifle, that's bolt action.
Yeah.
If they were able to do it for years, then there's no reason that I can't really grind, and put the work in. And that's just how I approach adversity. So
for you, it's using that comparison of like, people who have literally just been in like tough, like just straight up, obviously tough situations that we can imagine.
Yeah.
That makes sense. That's awesome, man. I mean, for me, I don't know if I go down that route, but I kind of use tough situations from my own life in the past. Like, okay, if I got through this, then, this isn't as bad. Like, whether it's just being an athlete in college or, when I was a young kid and, parents dealing with divorce and you're just like, oh yeah, like, this was a tough moment. This is just some other bullshit, that I can get through for sure. Andrew, pass the mic, take the mic over.
Yeah, of course.
What's your frame of reference for dealing with, at a high level, I guess?
Yeah, at a high level. And I'm definitely going to keep it high level because, we already did a podcast on some of the adversities that we've been through. So if you're tuning in and you have not heard that, go back, listen to that podcast where we spoke about some of the hurdles we've been through, some of the struggles we've been through. And ultimately kind of using what you said is that frame of reference of what you've been through and using that to kind of propel you through what you're going through now is so impactful, because what happens often, and my story, Drake, because when I lost everything and I had literally nothing, I had to get a rental car that I couldn't afford. My parents had to help me out, and I was driving all of my shit back to my parents' house. Drake's was the first stop. And I stopped at Drake's. It was halfway to Virginia. I stopped in Atlanta, and I stayed at, I think it was your mother's house.
Yeah.
I'm staying at his mother's house, and I'm literally in this foreign bed I've never been in a foreign city, in this place, and I'm literally crying. I'm in my bed crying because of everything. Yeah. And so to think about that frame of reference point of looking back on what you've been through and what I'm going through now, it might be harder, it might not be, but I got through what I went through, right? And I think what happens too often is people at the first sign of adversity or at the first sign of struggle, they back up or they run away or they retreat or they go back to something. Like when I was first struggling in the mortgage business, I still had my Series 7 and 66, and I could have easily gone back to the bank and become a financial advisor again. That was my fallback. And when I really said, you know what, I'm going all in on mortgages and I'm not going to give up, when it was one of the most adverse times of my life in the business, I literally let my license expire and I said, fuck it, I'm not going back. I'll never be an FA again because I hated it. And it was I'm not going to use that as a fallback. I'm going all in on this. So I think if you're going through a storm, you might see that as something that's propelling you into your next level. Every storm that I've ever been through, every season of adversity has been a call to action to propel me into the next stage of my life. And that's the mindset that I approach adversity with now. That's the mindset that I approach the struggle with now, is that it's really propelling me into the next journey, and I'm using it as fuel. Because one day I'm going to be going through something, I'm going to look back and be like, man, I went through that shit. I got through it, and here I am now. Yeah. So that's kind of the way that I approach things.
I'm curious, ping pong it back to Drake, there's a stream of thoughts now. One, what are your thoughts on mentorship? Do you have mentors in the game? But as it relates to business, right? So you're thinking about people in the trenches, World War I, getting shot at, hungry, it's cold at night, not sleeping well, trauma, fighting for your life and the life of others, and use that as a frame of reference for your grind. How do you, knowing that you quit your job, was history story, we all worked together back in the day, Edward Jones, respect on their name, great little company based out of St. Louis, love it. We're all, have a piece of the Midwest in our hearts. Drake left that, started his own company, right, doing real estate. So, did you have a mentor? And, when times, again, so maybe outside of just that frame of reference, what does it look like, when you first made that jump, right? What was the very real, you go from, I got a job, I show up, they pay me every 2 weeks, to, all right, now I'm doing something else. What were the hard parts about that? And did you have a mentor to guide you with that? Or
yeah, so first and foremost, I don't like to do anything without having advisors or mentors or a support network. I'm just not that. I'm pretty risk adverse. So absolutely, yeah,
risk adverse.
Yeah.
I'm pretty risk adverse.
So I do take big risks, but I don't like risk. I really don't. So I have a mentor that I think we all know. Maybe I don't know if he's a mentor, but we can describe him as that. But Ed Bolden.
Oh yeah.
And he was in the real estate game before I was in the real estate game. I studied real estate in school, so I had teachers. A pretty good support network. I went to Morehouse. So first things first, yes, you have to have people who have seen it before. It's very difficult to do it on your own, right? And I think a lot of times, especially new entrepreneurs, they're afraid to ask, and they're afraid to be vulnerable, and they're afraid to say, I'm the worst person today, right? I'm the worst person to do this today, and that's okay. because what you want to be is the best person to do it in the future. Yeah. So you have to start somewhere. So to answer that second part of that question is, I quit my job. I went back to my parents' basement, and, everything was about the next step, right? I was at zero, and I'm sure Andrew can attest to this. Everything comes down to that next step. It's like, okay, I have nothing, but I have student loans. I have two cars that I bought when I had a good job. And it's like, well, the first thing I need to do is make sure I can pay my student loans, and then make sure I can pay my cars off. Right. So it's just that first step. If it's $700 a month, it's like, okay, well, for $700 a month, all I need is 2 properties, right? Cash flowing. So it's like, let's just take the first step. How do I get 1 property, so I can get halfway there? And that's really how, I think that's how everything's really built, just one step at a time, and understanding that you're not going to get there in 30 days. You're not going to get there in a year. You solve that one step, you get on that one podium. We were just watching F1 today. I don't know if there's some F1 fans out there, but you get on that one podium, you win one race, and then you try to win another. And then just to speak to that adversity and my mentor, one of his perspectives, and I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this, right? He told me early on, he said, look, we're in real estate, we're not taking penitentiary chances. And that really it really hit me, because it's like, there's people, once again, back to the trenches, there's people out there who are taking penitentiary chances. Yeah. They're taking life imprisonment chances to be successful. And, I'm not, I'm putting, I'm laying my, ass on the line every day, but, I'm working hard. But, at the end of the day, I go home and take a steam shower in my beautiful shower, and, I get in the bed, so, I think, when my mentor advisor said that, it put adversity in perspective again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You surprised me, Drake. You surprised me a lot. Because as you're speaking, look, I have a different relationship with Drake, because we used to party hard, all 3 of us in St. Louis, and we drank a lot. We did a lot of crazy stuff. And I think to go from that, like being just young, foolish, reckless, partying every night kids, to like running businesses, building entrepreneurial ventures, seeing each other when we were at a really difficult place, because just like you saw me at my weakest moment, literally my weakest moment in my life, I also saw when you were trying to refinance your penthouse, and it was like a disaster. And you know what I'm saying? And because you came to me for that help, which I obviously respect and appreciate. But I think just like, seeing other people that, you care about and, you're friends with at different levels in their life, and watching them grow up is, it's super motivational, number one, but it's also inspirational in the fact that like, you really realize that you're not out here alone. Like too often we are going through the trenches, like you said, and we're there, and we've, maybe let's say figuratively speaking, we're like literally in the trench with the gun, and it's pouring rain and we're cold and we're like, I'm in debt. I'm fucked up. Like I've got all this shit happening. My girl's breaking up with me. I'm all fucked up, and like you're going through whatever your problem is, and you think you're alone, you know what I mean? And like to really hear somebody else's story and to realize that not only just a random person, because you can hear anybody, like you guys on the podcast don't know us, you know what I mean? But like when we understand, we know each other and we've been there. Like to see somebody that you love and that you have respect for and that you care for to have gone through similar things and similar adversities, like that's just part of the game. And it just makes you realize that like you're not in it alone. Whatever you're going through right now, and I'll speak to whomever is listening to this and watching this, whatever you're going through now does not define you. Yeah. What it's going to do, what you're going through, is propel you into the next version of yourself and into the next step in your journey. If you will sit back, take a breath, calculate where you are, and stop focusing on the problem. Because what happens too often is your problem is actually propelling you into your purpose, but you're focused on the wrong thing. You're focused on the problem itself, and whatever you focus on grows. Napoleon Hill speaks about it. The Bible even speaks about it. When you focus on your problem, you're going to get more problem. If you focus on shit, more shit happens, right? But when you start focusing on where you want to be and start aligning yourself with the mentors, like you said, or you start aligning yourself with the different actions that need to be taken in order to get there, you realize that it's really not unfeasible. It's really actually possible. And that's actually something called faith. The opposite of faith, everybody thinks that it's fear. It's not actually fear. The opposite of faith is certainty. Because when you're certain about where you are and you're certain about something, then you don't have to rely on faith. You don't have to rely on something that you don't know, the unexpected. But when you have that faith to be like, I don't know what the fuck's going on. I don't know what's happening next. I don't even know where I am, but I believe that I can get there. That's the first step. And it's amazing because it's just door opening. When you focus on that instead of where you are, that's when everything starts aligning. And like we see it every day. I'm sure you're not where you want to be. You're still going through your own personal challenges, right? Yeah. All three of us are. Everybody is, no matter how successful you are. You might have billions of dollars, but you've got a fucked up personal life with your spouse, or you might have, a kid that's a piece of shit, and like you really just want the best for that person or the kid, but he's goofing off. And I don't have kids, so I can't like attest to that. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying I've heard stories, and I just know that like we're not all where we want to be, but we're one step closer to getting there, and realizing that not everybody has their shit figured out is huge.
Yeah, I just want to plus one on that. And now we're really deep into why we do this stuff, y'all. But yeah, I would just plus one that. I mean, when you're, in my journey in real estate, right? So I actually never quit the 9-to-5. Still have a job. I'm in sales, right? Bought a sixplex, and it's tough, man. There were many times I remember when I bought that sixplex where I was just like, yo, like maybe this shit just ain't for me. I could tell, like, I'm telling you right now, like if you do any venture, any side hustle, anything where, 95% of your friends, 99% of your friends are not doing that. Their life is much easier. They're not working on the weekends. They're waking up. They're just not doing it. I'm telling you, it's very, very easy to get into that moment where you're just like, yo, I could just not do this shit. I could literally just not do it, and life would be easier. But I think you all would attest to just like, we're just built different. Like we can't, like, I think we just can't not do what we do. And it's just like, but you definitely, really the point I want to make here is that, as Andrew said, you got to stay focused on the purpose, because the problems, like most of the problems that we have in our life are self-manifested. Like we created them, right? All the problems that I have now are like, I always tell people that, like, how's life going? I'm like, yo, all my problems are first world problems. I've got a great house that we're sitting in right now. We're filming a podcast. This is a lot of work. If you ask me, like, what's my problem? Is like, I need an editor. I need all these people. And it's like, but this is work that I've created. This is literally work that I've created because I want to, share our story and help other people. But it's all for the purpose, right? We have this purpose and this grand vision of, helping people, and it's tough. There's tons of other podcasts out there, and we started this really with the idea like, yo, we can do this shit, and that's why we're here. So we're all of that stuff is going to get knocked down as we, march forward towards that purpose. Drake, you want to say something?
Yeah, you said something that like really rained home on, especially when it comes to adversity. And I'm going to try my best to kind of paraphrase you there. Yeah. But you kind of spoke to, us putting ourselves in these situations and creating our own adversity. And I think I had a pretty defining moment with my girlfriend in our relationship. And my girlfriend, she's a super high achiever, MBA type, like, reads the books. And that was, that wasn't me, right? But that's who she is. And, this was early on in our relationship, and she was like, I've never failed, right? She's like, yeah, I did this. She's from Germany. She's in America now. She's like, yeah, I never failed. And the first thing that hit me, right, the first thing I started thinking about is like, well, you didn't push yourself hard enough, right? When you said, we're like, we all sat in that seat and we're like, I can just not do this, or like, is this for me? I mean, that means you were putting yourself in very uncomfortable positions. I don't know if anybody heard that Cory Booker, commencement speech, right? It was all about putting yourself in uncomfortable positions. Go watch that. I think it's important. But yeah, I mean, that is a place of growth always. You need to put yourself in a place where you may not succeed. Right. And that's what's going to force your growth. And I told her, I was like, well, that worries me because, you're taking it too easy. You have all this potential, and you're always, you're not putting yourself in the place where you're like, oh my gosh, this went terribly wrong. Like I thought I could do it. Right. Because you're going to grow at 25% rate of anyone else if you're just taking, if you're just, putting yourself in a position where you're only going to be successful. But I just had to touch on that when you brought it up.
Yeah, man, and I think a lot of people, you have to know what you want in life, right? There's different strokes for different folks, I think. But I think I can definitely attest to, and maybe you all both will as well, that there's a lot of personal satisfaction too. Like when you go the path that's untraveled, right? Or when you're creating the path, right? If you imagine you're in a jungle and there's no path, right? You're going somewhere no one has ever went before, right? You're going to hit every ditch, every wild animal, every adversity. You're going to be the first one to face, and you've got to beat it down. You might get hurt. You might die. You might die trying, and that's scary. Like you said, that's very scary for a lot of people. But I think there's satisfaction. Like imagine you're the first person to forge the path, right? And we all know those people because they're who we learn about when we're growing up in school, right? The people who forge the path. So not that we're doing anything, like Drake said earlier, like we're not doing stuff that hasn't been done before too, which is a crazy thing about it. Like, real estate is a business that's done every day. Like look around you. Everything that is built is owned by somebody. Like people are doing real estate. But it's hard, right? Because even though that is the case, you all watching this and even ourselves, we know real estate entrepreneurs. We know people who are in whatever business we're in, but most people aren't doing this stuff. Most people aren't in 100% commission jobs. Most people, if you told them like, yo, you gotta sell to get paid, they'd be like, nah, dude, that ain't for me. Like they'd be like, nah, that's a little risky, but you gotta have the mindset, like Andrew, where it's like, yeah, I'll just sell. If all I gotta do is sell, then I'll just sell. You know what I'm saying? Like it's that simple. But that change in mindset, it really comes down to mindset, y'all. Like it is everything. Yeah. So,
well, I think also to piggyback off that, like for me, when I first got into like the all commission business, it was very scary because again, I was focused on the fear. I was focused on uncertainty. I was focused on the doubts that I had that I wasn't going to make it or I wasn't going to be able to be successful doing this. And what's crazy is that I always had a hard, difficult time in sales because of that. And I don't know what happened after coronavirus, but for some reason, I just started getting flooded with business. And like now I don't go look for business. Like I don't prospect. And my girlfriend, she gives me shit all the time because she's like, you're not out there like calling people, making calls and doing this and posting videos and stuff. And I'm like, I understand that, but I'm like really blessed right now because I don't even have to do that. Like I'm so busy with the deals that are coming in. Will I go do like posts and things on Instagram every once in a while? Yeah, absolutely. But I'm in a very fortunate position where I don't have to anymore. And it's so crazy because I think what ended up happening was when I got a deal, I remember my very first deal on this side of the business, which is all referral based. I literally poured everything I had into this deal. I busted my ass and I put blood, sweat, and tears, and the realtor would call me in the middle of the night and I would pick up the phone. The client would call me in the middle of the night freaking out and I picked up the phone. They were deathly afraid. They came to me under contract and they were about to lose their earnest money deposit because the last lender they worked with was like blowing them off for the whole contract. And then they come to me at the end after the finance contingency is expired and they still need financing. And this guy's like, I'm going to lose $150,000 earnest money.
For those who don't know what that means it barely happened. It barely, like, it should have not have happened. And then Andrew kind of made it happen.
Yeah, so I busted my ass. I took this impossible deal, and with the help of a great team and a good mentor, as Drake mentioned, I got the deal closed. And because I did that, this realtor was so blown away that I went above and beyond that they started referring me everyone. And then I started giving the same amount of effort to all of my deals. And then they just started coming. Like they literally just started coming. And now deals just come from nowhere. It'll be a Monday and I'm like, shit, I haven't gotten any business today. And I get a phone call and it's a new deal. And that just is because I took the time to give my best effort. And sometimes it's not about, how hard you work or how much effort you put in. It's about kind of being diligent and putting your best foot forward and being your best self. Like giving people the respect that they deserve, answering your phone, the art of showing up. Do you know how much you will win if you just show up? Like that's really what changes the game is if you can just show up to the deal, show up to the call, pick up the phone. There's just so much power in showing up and being available to people when they need you. Because it's not always about what you can do for someone. It's just being there. It's being around, right? And if you're available and you make yourself available to the people that need you the most, that's when your business will just automatically take off. And you'll go from being in a position of always grinding and always hustling to just growing and flourishing. And your business will automatically make this transition from your effort and your strength to just overflow and abundance, which is fantastic. And it's such a blessing to be in that side instead of grinding and worrying all the time and trying to hustle and focusing on your own strength, just being given deals. You know what I mean? And that's the blessing of being on this side. Once you give your best effort and you show people that you care, then you don't have to be in that panic mode all the time.
Yeah. And that's just life, y'all. I can tell y'all, showing up, doing the stuff you say you're going to do as well. That's what I always say. But it really just comes down to showing up, like Andrew said. Like, I'm in sales, and so much of getting a deal done, people think there's art and science. It's like, what do I say? What do I do? And a lot of the time, it's just like just being there, like just showing up, doing the stuff. Make sure your words mean something is the biggest thing. To me, I think in my mind, think about the people that you know in your life and how many people actually, follow through. Follow-ups, in sales is all about following up. When you're in someone's brain, it's hard for them not to do business with you, right? When you're just there all the time. So it's really simple, and we forego all these things. We think we got to say the right thing in that one conversation. It's like, no, just say hello. 50 times.
That's true.
Say hello 50 times.
But and also setting realistic expectations is huge, because too many people in sales, they're trying to oversell and they overpromise, and then when they underdeliver, they look like shit, and people don't want to work with you anymore because they think you're a liar. Yeah. So that's huge. If I underpromise, when I send somebody a loan estimate,
the bar here.
Yeah, I overquote everything, and they freak out, But then when the numbers come back and it looks better than I initially quoted them, they love me. Yeah. And that's something, is always set realistic expectations with people, because you don't want to get someone's hopes up and promise them something and then you can't deliver and you look like an asshole.
Yeah, Drake, want to say something?
Yeah, I just kind of want to pose a question here, because I think we've all been there in our, separate businesses. But the pivot or the adversity retreat, right? So I think it's very easy to always say, well, actually, let me give a really good example, right? The old kid game with the square peg and the round hole, right? Like, it's very easy to just take your little block and keep trying to put it in that peg. Right. Yeah. And it's just not working. And you're like, you're listening to podcasts and you're like, I just got to keep pushing. I just got to keep trying to fit this square into a round hole. So I just want to pose the question, because I think we've all been there, right? To quote Kanye West, for me, giving up's way harder than trying. Right. So how do you know when it's time to either
wow, man, that's a good
pivot, right? Or retreat?
I think and everybody kind of has to answer this for themselves. I've definitely pivoted. I've had multiple failed businesses. I've done e-commerce. I had an e-commerce business I ran for like 4 months, and I think it broke even at the end of it. Was selling products, was moving them, but my costs were high as shit. And I remember being up, asked Brianda, my girlfriend, was up night after night trying to just increase my margins. Couldn't do it, right? And it was literally that same situation where I was like, I don't think working harder is going to solve this, right? That's the conversation I had to have myself. It's like, because I'm working hard. Like, I'm working as hard as I can reasonably work, right? So I was missing a piece, right? And I have plans to, do another e-commerce venture later, just because I love the idea of the business. But yeah, there's this point where I didn't necessarily pivot there. I actually just shut it down. But I was like, okay, what I'm doing right now with these margins, this product line, this niche is not going to give me the results that I wanted, which was at least be profitable, right? We were running, in the negative, and then just about breaking even at the end there. So it's like, you put 10 grand in and get 10 grand out. It's like, I don't want to do this, especially since and I'm not accounting for my time, it's like I'm working, 20, 30 extra hours a week on this. So now I'm like definitely in the negative, right? So I think you just have to take it as a learning, almost like paying tuition, right? Thinking again of the analogy, if you're the first person going down some path and you get beat up, it's like, after a while, it's like, maybe I shouldn't try to chop down this tree. Maybe I should just go around it. There's just something else. Sometimes you just got to do something else, and the path of success just looks like that oftentimes. I wouldn't say, I know a ton about e-commerce. Funny enough, if someone was starting a business, I can tell them a lot of stuff, and maybe I can help them be successful. And I'm definitely going to use those learnings in my next one. Same with real estate. My first deal was painful for the first 6 months. My first real estate deal, the sixplex, I'm telling you, it was painful, y'all. It was painful. Expenses were hot. Tenants were like, don't put garbage disposals in your units. I'm telling you, you're going to have to, just don't do it. Just take them out. They break all the time. But this is stuff you don't know until you're in the game, right? But you're going to get beat up. You're going to pay your tuition. And I just don't think there's a way around that. So I guess to your question, what I'm trying to say is you kind of don't know that it's time to pivot until you've been beat up, honestly. Like, you just not, there's,
True.
you just got to, you learn enough to know, like, okay. And I don't think it's necessarily about giving up more so as it is. It's like, okay, I've learned, like, I know what I need to know. I don't need to do this again tomorrow, you know?
That's true. And I think the word pivot that you used is actually just what it is, because you don't want to look at it as quitting per se, but pivoting is such a better word. And it's not because you use the word pivot that it makes it so much more transformational, right? But I mean, I might be the wrong person to ask this question to, because I might be a masochist because I'll get beat the hell out of. I'll just get torn up before I quit, you know, and I will just get whooped. And like, it hurts, and I know it hurts, and I acknowledge that it hurts, but sometimes my vision is just so strong that I'm like, fuck it, I could take it. You know what I mean? And like, I'm bleeding, I'm broken, I'm shot up, I got broken ribs, like I'm limping, and like I'm still dragging my limp ass leg to the finish line because I can just see it, you know? And that's so hard for me, is because I've never really been one to be like, fuck it, I'm done. Like and if I do, the problem is I constantly think about it. Like my the venture that got me on my ass, like completely broke, and you know, on your mom's bed that night, you know, when I lost everything, I still think about that business all the time. And there's things like when I go to a restaurant now and I see like how shitty the process is, or how much they could use this now that COVID's happened, like I just want to kick myself, because I'm like, this was such a viable business and it was such a good idea. And the fact that it didn't take off still kills me to this day. And the fact that my partner and I like gave up or lost everything because of it is just, it still kills me. So, you know, I had to pivot away because it was unfeasible to continue at the rate that we were, but do I still think about it all the time? And like, part of me still sees the vision of that business being prosperous. And it makes me be like, you know what, eventually if I have like, you know, a certain figure that's in my head in my bank account that I can use in order to, you know, just blow it on this and see if it works again, like I would absolutely try it. You know, so sometimes it's not just about quitting, but sometimes it's about taking a break and stepping back and being like, maybe now is just not the time, because the idea that you have might be incredible. The idea you might have might be an absolute $1 billion idea. It could be the most impactful idea, but timing is everything. And maybe it's just not the time. So I think you have to learn the difference between quitting and temporarily pivoting, as you said, into something else, so that you can put yourself on a different trajectory, so that you can have the resources or have the relationships or have the means in order to come back and make that vision a reality again.
Right.
So a couple things there. I mean, those are all words of wisdom, right? I mean, they really are. And I think that like a lot of times people are just liars. I don't know. I'm going to quote, they're liars, right? So I'm going to quote the first Wall Street. And I love the part he's walking through the trading floor, and he's like, things have gotten so bad that even the liars are complaining, right? So it's like, I think I'm always facing this in business because, you know, every day is adversity, right? Every day I feel like I'm in the trenches. Let's do war. I always find myself saying, okay, like, am I trying to stick this square peg into a round hole?
Right.
And kind of where I fall back on every time is, not to go back to the trenches metaphor, is the flank, right? All of the best who's ever done it. I mean, MJ, Lewis Hamilton, you know, you name it, Floyd Mayweather, all the best. Like, the best thing about sports is everyone sees when you lose, right?
Yep.
You can't lie, right? You have to be able to face, you know, L's in defeat, because even the best lose or they don't get it done and all these sorts of things. Whereas like in people's private life, they try to hide it, you know, to themselves. I mean, yeah, exactly. Yep. They don't tell themselves the truth. So then it makes it impossible to flank. I don't know if everyone knows like a flank, right?
Yeah.
You know, like
in the military, you're thinking like a
exactly,
yeah, maneuver,
right? Exactly. A maneuver where, you know, you're not trying to go forward. Let's try to get around. Right. You know, like Jerome Bettis, you know, he'll run right through you, but sometimes you need to be able to juke. You know, you need to be able to spin. And then also back to the, you know, war metaphor is retreat. I mean, the best armies that ever went to a battlefield, they've retreated, right? And the most important thing that they knew to do was retreat before it was too late, right?
Resources.
Exactly. Right. There is a tactical withdrawal, right? It's like, how do we suppress their fire and move backwards?
Yeah. And I think it goes back to like aligning to your purpose, right? The point is to win the war, not to win the battle, right? If your ego gets the best of you and you're trying to you're in business and you're just like, why won't this specific person do the thing I want them to do? And it's like, maybe you should take a step back and remember, the goal is to have a successful quarter. It's not to get this person to do this thing, right? This person do this thing is a moment of pride and ego, for, me or whoever it is. But instead, it's always good to take a step back and be like, I'm actually trying to do this. This isn't working. I need to remember what the purpose is, maybe tactical retreat, whatever it is. But the point is to win the war, right? Don't get all your men killed trying to win a battle, because and I love that you said that, because in sports you lose. And I think, I definitely noticed it in people who've either done a business, played sports versus people who haven't. It's like when you've put everything on the line and you've tried your hardest and you still lost, y'all, that's character building, right? Like there's plenty of times where I put it all, and people's like, was there anything left? There was nothing left in the tank. I literally just lost, I ran track and field, y'all, and it's the most straightforward event. There's no other teammates. It's not like somebody didn't pass me the ball. It's what it comes down to is like, I guess I could have worked out harder over the last 6 months, but at the end of the day, sometimes you just lose. And what you got to do is go forward is like, okay, how can I add 10% to every single workout, 20% to every single workout, so that the next time I get on the track, I can win? But it's straightforward. There's no and you take L's every day versus, as Drake said, there's tons of people. I'd say almost most people lie to themselves. They're liars, and they lied to me about themselves. And they're lying, and we all kind of because we live in a society, right? But
and Miami.
Yeah, and we're in Miami. But yeah, I mean, you got to be honest with yourself, and ultimately the reason you got to be honest with yourself is not so that it's not about not being a liar per se, but it's like if you actually want to be the best, right? You've got to actually address those L's. You got to look at them. You got to embrace them and figure out what the hell happened. Like, why did you actually lose? If you don't know that you lost, or you don't accept it, you're just gonna keep losing. You're gonna stay a liar. So we do got to wrap this up though. Because I got to take Drake to the airport. It's about 12:30.
Thank you.
Andrew, closing thoughts.
Well, first of all, I just want to thank, I've said it before, but I want to thank Forrest, because he puts all this stuff together. He got all this equipment. He took an idea that we had over coffee and literally within 48, 72 hours turned it into reality. So I respect him for that, because that just goes to attest to taking action and being the number one version of yourself, taking an idea and not sitting on it. Because if it was me, I'll admit it, if I had the idea, I would have sat on it. You know what I mean? And I never would have probably come to reality, or if it did, it would have taken a lot, I'm
good at pulling the trigger.
Yeah, so I respect that.
I can do that much.
I respect that. And secondly, I want to thank Drake for being here. For how many people loved Drake, want to see him back as a permanent part of this.
Leave it down in the comments.
Yeah, leave it down in the comments if you love Drake, his words of wisdom.
Subscribe if you like Drake.
Exactly. So yeah, just hats off to you, Drake, because I know y'all went out last night. You could have just sat on the couch and hung out, but I think you added a lot of value, so I appreciate that.
I was laying on the floor before we started filming this, but Drake.
Forrest was on the floor, Drake was on the couch, and I walked in with a shitload of energy because I went to bed at 8:30.
But we're here. We're here. Drake, any closing thoughts for the people?
I do want to say thank you. I mean, this was my first podcast, and to be up here with you guys is truly a blessing.
Thanks, man.
I mean, the intellect, the insight, the thoughts, I mean, it really was great, so I really appreciate it.
Love it, man. Hopefully we'll have you back. But that's it. Thank you.
That's right.
Check out our other episodes if you haven't watched them. But that is it for the number one podcast in the world. See you in the next one.
That's right.
Peace.
Now go out and be the number one version of yourself.